Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another exciting and thrilling episode of the Outside Line podcast. My name is Jacob Barker. Today, I'm joined once again by Chris Shoemaker and Mason Wood. Gentlemen, how are we feeling today?
Howdy, howdy. I'm doing all right. We have a lot to talk about this week.
Absolutely. Feeling energized, feeling ready to go. Happy Monday, folks. Hope everybody has a great week, and we're going to have a great show this week.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's waste no time. Let's just go right into it. Let's start off with last week's races with Monaco. And welcome back to another episode of the Outside Line Podcast. Outside Line Podcast. Outside Line Podcast.
Hang on to her, buddy. There's still three. He got him. He's
It just makes sense. It's too logical for NASCAR, though.
Carson.
I'm glad you hear us, NASCAR. Make sure you keep listening. We'll see what happens. I'm going to take a breath here. That was a long rant.
Those cars are a lot tougher than an F1 car.
Yeah, that's what I like about IndyCar. You really need the spotter.
This is gonna be fun. Had breakfast in Monaco Sunday morning. Actually, Chris, let's start with you, my friend. Chaos is the word of the day once again. What are your thoughts from Monaco?
I loved it. I don't know why people have so many problems with Monaco, because I look forward to Monaco every single season because anything can happen at Monaco, man. And we saw that just it started raining out of nowhere. And I don't know what all, and Alonso almost won that race, and it was just generally a fun race to watch.
Yeah, that would have been awesome to see Alonso finally win after literally a 10-year winless drought right now. But yeah, we had rain in the last 25 laps or so. Mm-hmm. And Fernando put on the mediums when they should have put on the inters. But that's Monaco for you. That'll happen. Very, very chaotic. And it was an interesting race from what I remember. Just a very, very wild podium, honestly, because we had Verstappen win, Alonso on second, and Ocon was third, rounding out the podium. So, and he qualified up there as well. He was mm-hmm. He was either P3 or P4 in qualifying, so he was up there all day long.
It was a great weekend for Alpine in general last weekend. Or not last weekend, Monaco.
Is it Alpine or Alpine? I honestly don't know.
I call him Alpine.
I call him Renault.
Because technically they are Renault.
Renault.
Oh, here we go again.
Not Renault.
Renault.
Imola. Botus.
Valtteri Bottas.
Botus.
Never mind. So yeah, very dominant win for Verstappen last weekend. Wire to wire, if I remember that correctly. Just insane drive from Verstappen last weekend. Can't say the same about Sergio because he had no luck last weekend.
Poor Sergio. And it was a street track, and street tracks are his bread and butter. I really had him pegged to maybe win it. I was thinking it'd be Sergio over Max. Before qualifying, of course.
Exactly. Yeah, that was not a pretty sight in qualifying. We didn't have a pretty sight once again in Spain for qualifying with Charles, but we'll get to that later. So yes, very, very chaotic win for Verstappen in Monaco. Some would have said that he was on cruise control, but with the changing conditions over the entire race, I beg to differ. Yeah. It was crazy.
I think just the more he wins and some of the way he's gotten some of these wins over the last few weeks, the way he's had to drive, he's done a really good job over the last few weeks of showing his skill as a driver. He really has. He's shown that the reason why he's in victory lane every single week the last 3 weeks. And Monaco was a great example of that. He really showed what he can do, especially when the rain comes in. He's a great all-around driver, and he showed it again at Monaco.
Of course, yeah. He's already, I would consider, top 10 in ever.
Oh, yeah.
He's only like 24, isn't he? 24?
Yeah, 24, 25, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So he's got at least
he's 25 years old.
10 more years ahead of him. So we're already possibly looking at the greatest of all time in Formula One right now.
I don't know about that. I'm biased, but I still say
Schumacher. I know you're biased, but we'll see.
Jacob's just getting a headline out there a few years before everybody else does.
Yeah.
If it continues this way, it's going to be interesting.
Well, he definitely continued.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say he definitely continued his winning ways in Spain. Just what he's doing right now is unreal.
When Sergio had his accident, I wonder how much the teams really got, how much benefit the other teams really got when the car was raised by the crane. Because they were talking about that, how teams are taking notice and seeing what the underfloor of the car looks like, because these cars are, the ground effect of these cars is so important. I wonder how much that actually benefited people.
I honestly, I don't think it benefits them that much. I think that you can look at Red Bull and you can say, wow, that's awesome what they have there. But if you want to beat Red Bull, you can't just follow along in their footsteps, because if you do, you're going to be behind Red Bull forever. You've got to find a way to do something that they're not doing. And so maybe it would have helped because you can see what they're not doing. But I don't know how many teams are really going to use that, because it may get them closer to Red Bull, but the goal is to beat Red Bull. And if you can't do that, then there's no point.
Exactly. And another thing, too, is they have to make some sort of clone of Adrian Newey. I mean, he's been doing this as long as I can remember and being insane. Red Bull, I think he's the reason why Red Bull is so good.
Yeah, very much so. So another dominant win for Verstappen in Monaco. His second Monaco Grand Prix win in the last 3 years. All 3 wins in the last 3 years have come from Red Bull. And now we go to Spain. I'm going to be honest with you. I did not watch much of this race because A, I knew that Max was going to win, and B, I was very tired from this work week. So
it would have put you to sleep.
Yeah.
I think there was some good action kind of in the first half, but the second half kind of was was off a little bit. But there was it was better action than I think we're used to seeing in Spain. But
I was honestly just bored the whole race. I was there watching it with my dad, and lights went out. Max got first out of turn 1. And by turn 3, I was like, well, race is over. That's it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, Max won pole. Good luck, everybody else.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe Spain should be a track that they should move or remove, because
I don't know.
Honestly, from what I can remember, Spain has been kind of boring the last few years.
It definitely hasn't been one of the best racetracks on the circuit for sure. But I as I said, I did think yesterday was better than what we normally see. But to Chris's point, does that, it was the way guys were driving yesterday was also, it was just a lot of, let me throw it in the corner as deep as I can. Let's see if it sticks. And that was kind of a lot of what yesterday was. So there's definitely better ways of going about it for sure. But I do want to give credit to, yesterday Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell both got up on the podium yesterday. It was a really good run for them, and it was good to see. They've been kind of back and forth a lot throughout the season this year trying to get up there, and it was a solid run for them. And Lewis had really good things to say after the race as well. He does generally feel like they are making strides forward, and that's good to hear for competitiveness sake in the sport.
Now, when we talk about Mercedes, do you think there's any friction between Lewis and George brewing after that incident in qualifying? Was it qualifying?
It was qualifying.
Yeah, okay.
You know, you could say that, but honestly, the way Lewis reacted with the way they finished this weekend, I think he's just happy with how they finished. And I think that as long as they can continue to finish this way and they can continue to improve as a team, I think the two of them are going to be just fine. It just comes down to as long as they're improving, and this weekend was a great showing for Mercedes for sure.
And then
Alonso
got a little unlucky too.
Yeah.
I don't think anything's going to happen between Hamilton and George, and Alonso definitely did have a bit of stroke of bad luck this weekend, but you'll have that in racing. So our podium from this past weekend was Max Verstappen getting another win, his third in a row on the season. Lewis Hamilton with a P2 finish, and George Russell for a double podium on for Mercedes. And our championship point standings, if I can find them, I just had them pulled up. Oh, here's our team standings. It's funny. It's not even close. Red Bull leads the way with 287, and Mercedes is the closest competitor with 152. Aston Martin 134, Ferrari 100, and Alpine 40, McLaren 17, Haas 8, Alfa Romeo 8, AlphaTauri 2, and Williams with 1 whole point. And then our drivers' standings for the 2023 F1 season. Verstappen continues to lead the way at 170, Perez 117, Alonso 99 points, Hamilton 87, Russell 65, Sainz at 58, Leclerc 42, Stroll 35, Ocon 25, and Gasly 15. So after reading that top 10, you know what I noticed?
Stroll and I was going to say Stroll and Alonso are completely different from each other right now. One's got 35 and the other's about to break into 100 points next weekend.
And there's no McLaren in the top 10.
No.
And Ferrari's just practically barely hanging on, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. As of right now, Sainz and Leclerc have P6 and P7 in the championship standings. Still a long way to go. Our next stop for the F1 World Championship is Canada. One of my favorite tracks, not only in real life, but in the game. Very fun circuit. Mostly because, quite like Monaco, anything can happen with the weather. So you never know. And it's kind of a home away from home race because it is in North America. But the Canadian Grand Prix will happen the weekend of June 16th to June 18th, I believe at 3 p.m., if I remember correctly. So that should be a good race because Canada's always produced some pretty good racing in the past. I wish NASCAR would go back there.
Yeah, it's just a fun track in general. I know that track by heart because I remember playing the 1996 F1 game. Might have been 97. I don't remember what year it was, but that was one of the tracks that I learned by heart, and I still know it so well to this day. And yeah. Now, let me ask you this, though. You know how Canada can be pretty hard on would you say Canada's pretty hard on gearboxes?
Occasionally.
Because Martin Brundle brought something up. I think it was either Monaco or Spain. He brought something up. And there's a little bit of a call to get gearboxes. Do you think that would improve the racing? It would no doubt improve costs.
I don't know. That's a hard question to really answer because we're not too into depth with the sport. So I don't have a good answer for that one.
Honestly, I wouldn't know as much either. I think there's a lot you can do to try and fix the racing, but ultimately F1 it comes down to the engineers and it comes down to those guys, and those are the guys that are always going to create the racing. So you can implement any change you want. It may not change a damn thing. NASCAR is a great example of that.
Yeah, NASCAR is kind of what I consider a semi-spec series, where the chassis is relatively similar, but teams still have some R&D in there, and R&D with engines, brakes, et cetera, where IndyCar is about as strictly of a spec series as you can get, and F1 is the complete opposite of a spec series.
I think that's why it would be difficult to make changes like that kind of try to force the competition to get closer, because as much as F1 can be boring, that is the draw. The fact that it's not that spec series, and that does turn some race fans, especially in other countries, away from NASCAR and from IndyCar because it's more of a spec series. So I think that makes a really big difference in how people view the series. And so it would be a decision that no matter what they would do, right, there's going to be a little bit of backlash. That's the way the world works, and that's the way social media works these days. So if they're willing to handle some of the backlash, go for it.
That was kind of what Martin Brundle was saying, too. He was saying that competition, research and development, and just the lack of spec parts, I guess you could say, something spec kind of takes away the spectacle and the spirit of F1, which, yeah, I can see that. I could really see that. But at the same time, I can understand the argument of maybe getting some more spec parts in there to kind of at least make it somewhat interesting.
Yeah, you could always find that balance between it that kind of keeps it to where it's still it hasn't become a spec series, but there are different parts that come in that are spec that kind of help level things out, but there's still that level of ingenuity that has to go into it. There's a balance they can find there. It's just a matter of whether or not they find it, and whether or not when trying to find it, if they go over that line or not.
Now, let me ask y'all something else. Now, do you think that, say, them being more liberal with track limits would help the racing quite a bit? Like IndyCar, for example.
I don't think so.
I think it would actually.
Personally.
What are your reasons? I'd like to hear.
Well, I think it would encourage more overtaking, because you'll have guys that are more likely to yeet it into a corner and dive bomb some guy, because they won't have to worry about maybe getting that far off the racetrack. It's okay to maybe get a fraction of all four wheels off the track, like IndyCar, for example, or go slightly wide. Because I think a lot of times the track limits in F1 is ridiculous, how strict they are. And then you look at IndyCar, and they're not very strict at all. And look how close the racing is there. Granted, IndyCar's a spec series, but still.
Well, and, like I said yesterday, we saw a lot of those moves where it was a little bit more kind of diving in there. And I think that in those certain scenarios, I think if you made that change, you would see guys that they're gonna stick that car in there a little bit more. They're willing to kind of keep it down there, and especially if it means that's their opportunity to get a spot. Because I think with the way the track limits work right now, there are certain spots that you can try and get it in there, but if you do not get it in there right, you're going to lose more time than you gain. And by being able to kind of broaden those the track limits a little bit, and you're able to kind of get a little bit in the dirt or something like that, you might have a better opportunity of making those moves, especially at a track like Spain, where a lot of those moves were coming on these long carousel corners and stuff like that. There's opportunities there if you kind of just give them a little bit more of that space. I think you'll see guys take it immediately, and it will I think like if they did it, you know, in the off season, Spain would be the race we would see it the most where they take advantage of it. It would be one of the races, I would think.
So, and two, if you bring back gravel traps more, it would be a self-policing issue because you can go offline, but there's a big risk you're going to get stuck.
I think that would also help as well.
Yeah, and also get rid of those sausage curbs. I hate those things. Those things are unsafe.
All right. Shall we move on before we get any more political?
Go for it.
I'm
Where are
going
we
Okay.
off to next?
If I
Mr.
run for
Barker?
president, that's going to be my platform. No sausage curbs.
No sausage curbs. Okay. So we've had our adventures in Spain. Let's talk about the greatest spectacle in racing. Yeah. Let's talk about Indianapolis.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this most recent edition of the Outside Line podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to check us out on Spotify at The Outside Line. And if you liked Christopher, Jacob, and I's opinions, make sure to check us out on Bag Sports page for more articles and opinions about F1, NASCAR, and IndyCar. Thank you again for watching The Outside Line.